I love the way. Go.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Alliance of Independent Authors Salon with me and Joanna Penn from thecreativepenn.com and Orna Ross. Hi, Orna.
Hi, Joe. Hi, everyone.
And this is our December edition, since it's actually December, like in a few days' time, and our final show for 2017. Can you believe it?
Where did it go?
Where did it go? And today we will be, towards the end of the show, we're going to do a bit of a sort of look back and a look forward. So we will be doing that towards the end. But I want to start with something fascinating, because on Saturday, last weekend, I went to Orna's full day event, How to Create Anything, and a Life and a Living. And it was fascinating to be there. So I would like to know, Orna, what was it? Well, from two angles, but so the people listening can get an idea. First of all, like, what was the whole idea of the workshop? How did you want to help authors? And then also, how did you want to help yourself with what you're trying to do?
Yeah, well, the day was part of this whole sort of bringing this series to bed that I've been talking on this show forever, kind of. And it has been an incredibly interesting journey for me, because it's like I went all around the houses to come back to where I started. And it's been a very interesting for me personally, but I think there are lessons in it for us all, kind of thing. So essentially, as you said, the day you said how to create anything and how to make a living, and because it actually changed from my first advertising the event to actually putting it on. In the middle of that, or early on in that process, I realized what the whole Go Creative series was actually about. And it has necessitated kind of going back to the beginning and doing yet again another pass through to the end, because I came to the series originally as somebody who talked about, theorized about, lectured in creativity studies. I had a very broad kind of view, and I taught creative writing, and I was really interested in the process and how it can be applied to anything, and in broadening it out hugely. And then at one point, I just felt like it's still, the books are, they're all both there, but it was still something unsatisfactory about it. And one of the things that was unsatisfactory about it always for me was the way it didn't quite fit the work that I do, and the work I do with other authors and everything. It did, but it didn't, if you know what I mean, not enough. So anyway, I decided to go through my own process. And what I had actually recommended in the books, I had done, of course, but really a long time ago. And I decided, okay, just, do the exercises yourself. And what emerged, of course, was one of the things I talk about a lot is this idea of a micro niche, the way we're all getting niches are getting smaller and smaller, and that is a good thing, and that people shouldn't think too generally, and they should narrow down. And of course, I wasn't taking my own advice at all, which emerged when I did my own exercises. So I realized that what I was really interested in is applying the creative process to one thing, and that is creative business, and how creative business is different from business as usual in the more conventional sense, but how it is also very much the same. And where is it the same, or where is it different? And that was what I was hugely interested in. And so then I knew what the workshop was kind of going to be about, and then I knew what the series has actually been about all the time. And it was like this big penny dropped. And the reason I think it's relevant to other people and not just my own personal journey, which is why I'm kind of wittering on about it, is that it's about questioning our own assumptions, really, because I came at it from a particular route way, because I come, as we were discussing in the salon last time, because I came through the traditional publishing model. You're carrying all sorts of baggage you don't even know, you don't even know it's there. So the kids that are coming up now that are going to be indie authors don't have any of this, but I have to dissolve all my kind of previous, to unlearn everything I learned to kind of go again. So it was great, and it is always great, I think, for an author or a creative entrepreneur of any kind to realize what their micro niche is, because it makes everything clear. And when I look back, everything just completely fits. I've been doing that for 5 years anyway, and everything going forward looks much clearer as well. So that was great.
Awesome. And of course, that's been my evil plan all along, is to get you to like more creatives talking about business.
Absolutely.
And so it's not a dirty word. Like, you know, the more people that talk about it, the more it's normalized, in the same way that self-publishing or indie publishing or being an indie author, by using the language more and more often, people become accustomed to it, and then they use it more naturally. And again, sort of business for authors, author entrepreneur, you know, creative business, these are things actually, and I've bought quite a lot of the books in other niches. You see it a lot with Etsy crafts people, you know, there are these creative business planners, you know, I've been buying them all because I'm really interested in how I can teach it better as well. But a couple of things there. One, realizing what it's all about later. This is something that I think we should all remember. Sometimes you don't know what you're writing until you've finished, right?
Absolutely. I mean,
and even in fiction's the same.
Definitely. And, you know, I think that's probably why we're doing the writing, is to find out, you know, we're kind of writing our way into an answer. And yeah, and the bigger the project, the bigger the question maybe, and the longer it takes for the answer to drop, I'm not sure. And you know, there's this whole idea of writing into the dark, which your friend Dean Wesley Smith has a very interesting course about that. We hear a lot about, you know, how to plan your way through a book, how to plan your way through a career, and how to plan your way through into business. And I think one of the reasons that authors find it so hard to think of themselves as business people and to even use the word. I mean, there was a woman at the workshop who said, you know, the very word brings me out in a rash, but I realize I'm going to have to, you know, not only come to terms with it, but embrace it, because I do want to reach readers. I do want to have a bigger influence. I want my books to have more impact. And that means I'm going to have to, you know, she got it. So there is this conflict, because of course creative and commercial are set up as opposites, aren't they? And we're supposed to be free of all that. If we're authors, we're supposed to be in a garret. And
I don't know, I've always embraced Picasso.
Yes, absolutely.
The multi-millionaire create, well, although I don't have like 15 lovers, but
not yet.
Okay, so another thing was what came up for you when doing your own exercises. And I think that's really interesting, because so often we, you know, I find myself having to reread particularly Mindset, my Successful Author Mindset book, because I'm feeling massive self-doubt, and I go and read my own chapter and I'm like, oh yes, I know I need to tell myself that. And it's so interesting that you did that. And also I did your exercise, A Letter to Money, must have been a year ago now, and then I did it again. And for those people listening, when Orna's books are available, the money one and the Letter to Money is really interesting, because we never do that. We never personify money, you know, very often. And my letter in a year has changed so much. That's
really interesting. Do you want to share?
My own. No, not yet.
Okay.
I'm thinking, like, I haven't actually verbalized this before, but I am thinking about writing a book. You know, like, I've got business for authors and with your writing, but I'm thinking about doing something specifically on money for writers, you know, because I feel like I've been reading a lot on money mindset and, you know, the different levels. And I was talking to someone before about how we put so many blocks in our way because of this emotional issues that we have. They're just ridiculous. But the fact of we're so empowered as indies. What kind of annoys me is that we're so empowered. We put books out there, and then we disempower ourselves by saying, oh well, we'll just see if the money comes. And whereas what we need to do is be more proactive, like, oh, someday someone will discover me and I'll get a book deal. It's exactly the same as a traditionally published author's thinking. So it is. We have to be empowered.
I agree, and I think in fairness, that's what we try to do. You know, with Ally, you do with your work, we do here with this. But I think, in fairness to everybody, including ourselves, is we are at the edge of a change, a huge change, and it wouldn't have been possible before for authors and creatives to think this way. And so we're only kind of catching up with ourselves, really. And you're absolutely right. It is a huge act of disempowerment not to embrace business as an author, because essentially, you know, you're not an indie and author, and you don't have you know, you don't have a business if your plan is build it and they will come, because okay, they might, in a, you know, 1 in a million that will work for, but it won't for most people. And therefore our work is always working on the content of the books, but also working on the framework through which we are going to deliver to the world. And that's much more than marketing and promotion. That's a whole, it is a business model. Now, it can be a very simplified business model, and what I am encouraging is that it is a creative business model that suits your creative personality. And that's what I don't see a lot of out there. There's a lot of business advice that's very mechanical, very step by step, and it's, you know, a lot of creatives find it very difficult to jump into that box. So I think there's a real need for business advice that takes into account that people are individualistic, and, you know, that they have the ability to now express themselves and create their business in their own likeness, just as much as the book is in their own likeness. And I suppose that's very much part of what the series is trying to do. And there is one book devoted completely to money. It's called Creating Money, Creating Meaning. And it's, for me, a creative entrepreneur is somebody who makes business out of their own values. You know, they make it is an expression of themselves every bit as much as a book is an expression of themselves, and shaping the business up to be in their own image and to reflect their own values and to make the kind of difference they want to make in the world and have the kind of influence and impact that they want to have. And of course, then nurturing and feeding them and set up in a sustainable way so that they actually get a good income and return for the work. I mean, that's where we need to start. So many writers don't even think that they deserve that or that that is possible for them. So there's a lot of work to do here, I think.
Yeah, but I feel like we're moving into that. So yes, everyone expect 2018. We'll be talking more about mindset, more about business and money and empowerment. Like this word power is really happening a lot right now in the political sphere. But, you know, the stuff I've been reading about women and power, and in fact, I've got on my desk here, Women and Power by Mary Beard, which is her new.
I love Mary Beard.
I love Mary. She's amazing. You can be powerful woman of all kinds, and men obviously listening, but this stepping into our power as indie authors, like as an industry, we are powerful now. Like, I think we are one of the big six now, right? Indie authors collectively are one of the big six publishers. Like, sure. we are that big. So, and
I think than any other single publishing group. So we are the big one. So
we need to step into that.
Yes,
and like
very much
say
so.
We're a voice to be reckoned with. And with the Alliance, you were very forward thinking in that way. But I feel like it does feel like now we've got all the things we need to run everything. We can really kind of step up in terms of our position. And then I just want to just bring it back to basic book stuff, because I've got here
Map of Shadows.
Map of Shadows. If you're watching on the video, if you're on the audio, it won't matter. But it does still come back to making books. I mean, that's why we're here. And it doesn't. Talking about branding and micro niching, I'm getting a lot clearer on the creative pen and where I sit as Joanna Penn. But JF Penn, for me, my fiction, I still struggle with. I'm not in a micro niche. The Map of Shadows is dark, is dark fantasy, split worlds, almost YA. It's really quite different to my arcane action adventure thrillers, so and I find fiction is much harder. So the other message to people listening is, you don't need to work this out all at once. Like, obviously Orna's been working on this creative stuff for like 20 years. Yep. and hasn't stopped yet, and won't. I mean, you'll continue to work this out, and so will I, and so will everyone listening. So we're not saying you must decide on something and then that's it. It's taking these little steps.
It's process, isn't it? It's the process, and we need to think about the process in different ways. And I'm interested in your word power, because I think, again, it's a word that creatives can kind of shy away from. And I think it's really important to emphasize that what we're talking about is power to, not power over. It's power to do, to make, to grow. Empowerment of ourselves and of our community and of other creatives, because it's an important movement. There is a shift. We are in the creative age, and I think only a creative approach to the very many problems that we have in the world is going to shift that. And we all need to up our creative skills, because they were knocked out of us as we went through a schooling system that very much discouraged them and taught us how to suppress it. And so it's about getting back in touch with something that's always there, and knowing how to do that and trusting it, and knowing how to take ourselves out of doubt, out of distraction, and back into flow is something that we need to know about. And then knowing our process for our books, the stage that we're at, but also our process for our business, so that the same creative process that we're using on the books is also in place on the business, and where we are with that. And we're always kind of running those two wheels side by side. So it's a little bit challenging if you don't know what you're doing. Particularly, it's good if you get to kind of understand not the outcome, but the process is important.
And as I've been learning this year with The Healthy Writer, which is another book, they've got these 3 books that are coming before Christmas. The Healthy Writer is another one. You and my co-author was there on Saturday, and we had our pictures together, which was brilliant. And actually, writing The Healthy Writer has been another thing for me. Like, I'm so grateful that he came into our lives. He came to our workshop a year ago and then pitched this to me. And another thing I've really had to focus on this year is my health. And what's so interesting in the book, I thought he would end up writing more, but he's a medical doctor. But actually, I have a lot of chapters. And for example, my journey of back pain over many years, once I actually got into it, and then migraines, my journey through migraines and kind of chronic pain and how that resolved. Discovery of yoga, which you've always encouraged me into, and this year has really taken. Mental health, we've got a number of chapters on mental health. Dan Holloway from the Alliance of Independent Authors, and my own, because Dan is bipolar and completely out and open about that, and I'm not diagnosed with any medical condition, but the chapter I write on mental health, you might think I should be at points. But it's been so good to go through this, because in writing it and understanding a lot, I've focused a lot more on my physical health. So I really, that book right now, it's gone to the Jane for design, interior print design. So that will be out for the new year. And I really hope that that's going to help people, because as we focus on, what I hate at the moment is so many people getting burned out and giving up. Whereas we're at the time when you need to actually be looking after yourself and gathering yourself and creating, but looking after yourself is so important, isn't it? And you emphasized rest as part of that.
Yeah, very much so. For me, if you want a sustainable long-term career in this business, then you need to understand the role of creative rest and creative play, that there is a balance that needs to happen. Otherwise, you do get to the point where it's either burnout, or, as you say, you physically give out, or mentally you can't, you're not enjoying it, or maybe worse, you're actually stressed, under stress a lot of the time. And sometimes we think this is about the content of the thoughts that are going around in our mind. It's about the job is too hard and there's too much to learn, or, it's the jargon, or it's that, you're not good with tech, or it's this or that. But usually what it actually is that you're not looking after yourself at the level of rest and play, because it's supposed to be fun, people. We might as well be in ordinary, cubicle corporate jobs if we forget to play and have fun with it. And I always say that rest and play are not breaks from the process, they actually are. And it's about handing over the job to the very powerful subconscious mind, which we, again, have been trained to kind of ignore and pretend isn't there. It's actually the most powerful tool that any creative has, is an understanding of their own subconscious mind and what it takes to keep it in the right place and to feed it what it needs. And it does need lots of rest and intentional rest. I'm resting for my book.
Yeah.
and feeling good about that, and really, really resting when you're resting, you know, working fast, resting slow, and then playing regularly, and knowing how to do that, I think, is really important.
It just struck me then that as writers, it's very hard to watch our process. So if you're a craftsperson, like you're an Etsy, like, or my dad's a printmaker, we did a video of him doing his printmaking. You can see his creative process as he takes pictures, sketches, you know, draws, etches, print, you know. We have this, nobody wants to watch us sit and think or rest or type, you know what I mean? So from a consumer point of view, like someone who's watching you and I, or someone who looks at all the stuff writers put out around marketing or business, it looks like this is all we do, like, but nobody's seeing the, you know, the creative process that they map and shadow.
Yeah.
And that's actually, I think, a bit of a problem, because people are like, the biggest question I get asked is, how do you find the time to write? And I'm like, well, every morning I'm at my desk writing. I just don't show you that bit.
Yeah, because it's boring. It's like movies about writers' lives. They never work, even no matter how wonderful the writer was, you know, they just don't work, because watching somebody sit and do, you know, isn't very interesting. It's just not very dramatic. And I do think readers and other writers like to see things like, you know, workspaces, or, you know, coffee houses where we might work in. I mean, that's about as much as we can do to show the process, because it's all happening internally. So I think that's a very interesting point.
Yeah. Okay, so what else have you got going on? Oh, I'll just mention that I've also just finished the 3rd sweet romance with my my mum, co-writing. So this year we will have done 3 sweet romances. And people keep asking me, so, you know, what are you doing for marketing? How's it all going? And I'm like, now, what would you say to any new writer? And it's like, don't bother doing too much until you have 3 books. So I'm looking forward to, in 2018, actually doing a bit more for my mum. And actually putting a bit of focus, and I will be coming out with a sweet romance name after a year. So in about April, I will do a report on that, and the numbers are just what you would expect from a new author with no platform.
Okay, interesting.
So we all go through the same thing, but that's really fascinating. So what else have you got going on?
Well, lots of work going on in Ally. Again, this is a time of year where it's all, you know, kind of tidying up and leveling up for next year. And so we are going to doing an upgrade of our websites, but probably splitting our Fringe off. We're going to change the structure of Fringe next year. We have a new managing editor in place who's going to see through a whole new range of small guides for people who are maybe just starting or just need help in a specific arena. So with our guidebooks, what we did when we started was, rather than doing basic self-publishing guides, we saw gaps in the market, you know, things that just weren't being written about by anybody else and that we felt were very important, like how to choose a self-publishing service and, you know, rating of services and stuff like that. And also how indie authors sell publishing rights and how that whole world works. And so they're the guides we focused on. Now we're kind of going back, and now that I feel also self-publishing has settled in the last year. If I was to you know, looking back, you always at this time of year look back at the year that's gone, and so much of the news and the trend has been very much about, you know, consolidating those services that work well for indies, seeing off services that, you know, there are people, well, there will be still people coming into the market thinking they have a great idea and thinking authors are going to go for it. But actually, if you worked as an indie author for 10 minutes, you would see, yeah, I don't need that service. And that does nothing for me in terms of making or selling a book. So we're seeing, I think, a big consolidation. And so we will have these short, quick and easy guides to little bits. And we always are looking at the whole process across the 7 stages of publishing. So publishing is not, you know, producing a book. Making a book is only a small part of publishing. We're always looking at editorial design, production, distribution, marketing, promotion, rights sales, and running a business. They're all the different aspects of it. So some quick and easy guides to the things that the most frequently asked questions that we get about in each of those areas. That's our big sort of plan at the moment. And next year we have a couple of new campaigns that we'll be kicking off as well, and finishing off and publishing our white paper on the blockchain, and yeah, generally just getting ready for a new year.
Maturing. And yeah, I spoke a couple of weeks ago at Youpreneur in London with Chris Ducker, who is more known for Virtual Freedom. He was running an outsourcing company in the Philippines. His wife is from the Philippines, and he's been out there years, and he's moving back to Britain. He's a very proud Brit, and he's this Youpreneur is about personal branding. It was awesome to speak there. So first of all, I was the only author. Well, all the speakers were authors, but it was not an author audience. So I got to like tell people about print on demand for the first time, and I love the way people's eyes light up when they understand print on demand. It's like I changed people's lives with something we all take for granted. and so that was awesome. But what was brilliant for me personally was to be surrounded by some of the top online entrepreneurs. So Pat Flynn was there from Smart Passive Income, John Lee Dumas, Entrepreneur on Fire, one of the biggest podcasts in the world. He makes over 6 figures a month from his podcast, which probably puts him must be in the top 5 podcasters in the world. And you know, it's incredible. We're in a point where podcasting can make that much money from sponsorship, and I'm doing really well with mine now. But I mean, these are the things we'll be talking about as we go forward. But one thing that I want to pass on, and we've talked about it again, talking about micro niche, is very much that as we move into technologies around AI, around more automation, around more content, more, you know, it's not about the how-to. And you said this on Saturday, it's not about saying how to self-publish. It's more that, you know, or how to do this, that, and the other. It's that people want it curated, and they want a person to be the one that they listen to, which is why podcasts are so big, is because you get to know the host and you trust their curation. Now, for me, it was a leveling up moment, because I was surrounded by real pros, and I realized that in our author space, there aren't many pros in the business form, because we haven't been in that space. And then suddenly I was like surrounded by these, you know, big names, and I was pretty impressed by some of the stuff they were doing. And I was like, okay, I need to level up if I want to stand on the stage with these guys. And I was on the stage with those guys, but I felt like I need to level up. So I'm going to be redesigning the Creative Pen, which its 9-year anniversary is next week, so this is not a small project. I've been working, and this I'm embarrassed to admit this, I've been working with Jane on a branding manual with our colors and fonts. I've never done that, and it's just embarrassing and that's what a company should do. And stuff like this. So I'm sort of re-engineering the Creative Pen to be more structured, streamlined, easier for people to navigate, and yeah, really leveling up my business. So Youpreneur was a big thing for me. It will be in London again next year, so if people are interested, or Chris has a book coming out, Youpreneur, which is all about the individual micro brand. So yeah, that's worth checking out.
Fantastic. And I think it's so interesting that, you know, you, by stepping into that space with entrepreneurs in other arenas, you learn so much, I think, and that is another trend that I think is worth talking about. I really think we've come to the point now with all the consolidation in our own industry, and that we have far more in common with creative entrepreneurs in other creative fields than who are working, you know, with an indie mindset. So filmmakers and designers and gamers and all sorts, than we have with the type of author who wants to write and isn't engaging with the world in that way. And I'm going to speak actually at Writers' Game in New York in April. And that is for writers in, you know, books, film and games. And I'm really delighted to see that sort of crossover coming into a conference, because I think it's it's really needed, and we can learn so much from each other. I think we've possibly gone as far as we can go in terms of learning from each other as writers and as self-publishers, but I think there's still a long way we can go if we look at what's happening. And you mentioned AI there, and the sorts of things that are going to be possible for world builders, which is what every novelist is, for example, and the sorts of things that are possible now for non-fiction writers. I think you're right that curation or implementation is what people are going to actually pay for going forward. There was a time where you could just sell information products or just sell you know, how-tos and that kind of thing. I think that that time has passed for the non-fiction writer, but I think very exciting times are coming. If we get, it's all about getting into the right mindset. And I think, you know, talking to people in other fields is probably the quickest way to do that.
Yeah, certainly exciting times. And I'm kind of excited. Well, I'm just excited because I was getting to a point of being a little bit bored again. And the last time I got bored, I almost gave up my podcast back in 2015. And then I was like, no, like, you know, I'll double down and do this. So for example, today, like with this new branding, so I've been refreshing my YouTube channel. Again, I've had a YouTube channel since 2009, and I literally haven't even looked at most of those videos since then. And I'm like appalled at how much old information is sitting there, wrong links and all that, and bad branding. And so I'm, you know, stuff like that is sort of looking at our past, not being embarrassed. So, you know, not kind of wishing it away, but taking what we did do and kind of brushing it up and refreshing it, and focusing on new energy for the new year, and also making the most of what we've got. So all my interviews are like as long as this, you know, like 40 minutes. And now we're going to look at taking little snippets and make new videos, which we can use on social media. And, you know, there's so much we can do that repurposes our content, whether it's non-fiction or fiction. So yeah, lots of ideas coming from both of us in the new year by the sound of it. Okay, so what about some news? I mean, you mentioned there a little about how we're kind of diverging. I felt this for years, and I'm so happy you're like, yes, we're diverging. So we've had a few epic failures, haven't we, recently? Tell us about those things, traditional publishing.
Yeah, I think it's interesting, and it feeds into what we're talking about there in that sense of having more in common with other indies in other spheres than we have with publishing. That's probably so trade publishing made an attempt to kind of get into the indie sphere, and has done this in a few different ways. And each time it happens, they show that they don't understand the game at all. And so previously we've had, you know, Archway by Simon & Schuster and Penguin Random House, you know, both of whom running essentially vanity presses, so that were of no use to authors at all, the opposite, and getting into bed with author solutions and all that kind of stuff. So that was a big failure. And then Penguin, in fairness, recognized it and sold it off. But then we had Bonnier had taken on, opened a branch of a service called Type and Tell in the UK, which was very print focused. Now, very well meaning and you know, definitely keen people involved who were, you know, very engaged and worked hard and so on. But they made the announcement just a very short time ago that it was gone. Last month we were talking about Pronoun, also gone. They were supported by Macmillan, another trade publisher, and a German company as well. Ulipo was a storytelling app that everybody was talking about, and it has suddenly, Bastei Lube, I don't know how you pronounce the name exactly, they've withdrawn their investment there. So obviously that's not working out for them either. And I think it's salutary. I think it just comes down to completely not getting how this business works for authors, that it is a completely different business model, and that in a sense we're running now parallel industries with everything is different. The supply chain is different, the sourcing of material is different, the way in which it happens, and One is following a very conventional, tight scarcity business model, and the other is following a very loose, abundant, overflowing business model. And near the twain will meet, kind of thing. And one is very digital focused, and the other less so. So, yeah, it's I think we'll see more of this, but it's sad because what happens is the service comes in, and because they have some money behind them, they get more noise and more discoverability and traction than services that are actually possibly more useful to indies but have smaller budgets and stuff behind them. And then a lot of authors go and they sign up for them. I mean, we all talked about Pronoun for a long time, about the fact that it didn't seem to have a visible business model.
No one listened to us.
Well, you know, yeah, I mean, it was a question about, do you support that? Do you, or do you tell people, well, don't join up until, but you have to give people the benefit of the doubt, I think. But what happens then is lots of authors are stranded high and dry, and I think people will be slower to rush into something that seems too good to be true again. At least I hope they will.
Oh, we have seen Draft to Digital and Publish Drive in particular implement programs to help people. Both of those have been swamped. Publish Drive actually has an automated upload service to help people. So, hopefully the companies that we believe do have a business model will keep going. And we know both of those companies are very independent, although Publish Drive is with a Google incubator. They may get bought by somebody, but it's interesting. I mean, you said that there are two parallel industries, and I totally believe that with business models. But interestingly, we share now, because of the way traditional publishing has let people go, we share editors and cover designers.
Yes.
So, actually, if you go on Readsy, fantastic service we both recommend, started up by two younger, millennials, which is awesome because it means it will go forward, have really incredibly experienced editors, cover designers, marketing professionals, many of whom have come from traditional publishing because they just lay off people, or they're freelancing for both now. So we're actually, in the instability of the publishing machine, we're also benefiting with these awesome professionals. So yay us.
Yes, absolutely, and that is where we share, as you say, and yeah, interesting. It will be interesting to see how all of that shapes up in the coming years. I think that trade publishing will be less inclined to jump in there, and as I said, I hope indies will be less inclined to just assume it's a good service because it has a trade publishing name behind it.
Any other particular news you want to cover, or should we move on to round up some?
Yes, I think so. There's nothing too exciting, except maybe just ISBNs. There was a study in the US which is slightly interesting in that ISBNs for self-published titles are up again in the last year, 8%, and while in print books account for most of that, ISBNs for ebooks are actually falling, which is interesting. And bookstore sales of print is falling. So the conclusion would be that print books are now selling more online than they ever have before, which I think is interesting. And I think certainly we're seeing a lot of that reflected in a lot of our members had a very good year selling print, better than before, I think, as a percentage of their overall sales. But that's online sales of print. It's not printed to bookstores, which is a different model altogether.
Well, actually, when we were saying about the roundup of the year, I mean, for me, this year has been a big print year because I finally, like you've realised some things, I came to, the realisation of print this time last year, and, started Curl Up Press and have been focusing on print, and have been really pleased, and I'm doing a lot of print products. So I do the 5x8 normal size, I'm doing workbooks, which I'm doing 6x9, I'm doing large print for the Sweet Romance, which is just ridiculous that we're still doing that. You know, you assume that people are going to use an ebook and, you know, make the size bigger, but no, there's still a huge market for large print. And again, it's a 6:9 with bigger font in. So you know, I'm doing those as well. You know, so basically I haven't done any hardbacks yet, but I'm thinking of doing some POD hardbacks next year. So yeah, prints actually for me in Ingram Spark has been a big development this year, and as you say, I think it's going to continue. Also, I think I mentioned last time, but Dean Wesley Smith was saying when I was in Oregon that you know, the way things are going with Barnes and Noble, it may be that people are print junkies will be looking to buy their print books online if Barnes and Noble struggles more in 2018. So to be ready for those type of readers who are only buying print. So that will be interesting to see how that happens.
Yeah, I think that is definitely going to be a trend, because print readers are, you know, by definition more conservative than ebook readers, so they're slower to come to the whole thing of purchasing online, but it's definitely up, as we could see from those figures there.
What else in your looking back over 2017?
Well, I think, you know, the other thing I suppose that we're seeing is the different services globally beginning to emulate or do their own versions, or you know, the indie specific or the people who do indie well beginning to pick up on what has been happening in the US and UK, and we're just seeing more and more developments of services. I mean, new things opening literally week on week. Tolino has launched an ebook subscription service now, which is interesting, and it's a not unusual model, but and it'll be interesting to see whether anybody goes for it. Books have a higher value in Germany. They're allowing just 4 borrows a month for £10 or €10 with 50 cents to the writer. So that's kind of interesting. Ingram is buying up little services all over the place. There was Aereo there a while ago. Now they have bought Optically, which is a tool to find weaknesses in your online, you know, presence for your book and how to improve its general appearance. So I assume that's to go hand in hand with Ingram Spark, you know, be on that end of the business at some level. And so, yeah, lots of things happening. I think the big thing, we're always talking about this, but I think if we are looking back at 2018, we have to talk about preparing for what's coming. Means going wide. It means not having all your eggs in one basket. It means, you know, looking at the trends that are coming rather than looking at what's going on in the immediate vicinity of your own territory, looking at what's going on globally, looking at what's going on with mobile technology, how people are actually reading books, and being prepared for that, and having books in all formats and available wherever readers are. It's those writers who will be ahead of the game as things start to grow globally.
I think another trend for this year that I've noticed and have been doing myself, but also is growing, is collaboration and co-writing. Again, you know, when Jay Thorne and I did Risen Gods in 2015, and then we put out a book called Co-Writing a Book, and again it was dust bunnies, nobody buys it. And then I've really noticed this year the sales of that book have taken off, and people are doing a lot more co-writing. And then also off the back of people like Michael Anderley, who is now running, I think, over 7 figures their business now. I think they have something like 50 books within his world, which is amazing. And some he's sort of picking up people, and this is the 20 books to 50k group that and they're running conferences. This is another thing, there's more conferences you know, run by authors together, and that 20 books to 50k, they run it on break even only. So it's by writers for writers, and they had 450 people in Vegas last month. I'll be going in February to the one in London. Also Bundle Rabbit because one of the issues was the payments between people, and I was like, there's got to be a collaboration engine, and the lovely Chuck Heinzelman at Bundle Rabbit has built that collaboration engine. So now you can use Bundle Rabbit to actually publish one book, so a true co-written book, and both of you put your bank details in, or PayPal, and Chuck's payment engine will do the payments, which takes away a lot of the pain, because let's face it, most books don't sell lots each month, so you don't want to be having the overhead of paying lots of people, but you can do multi-author box sets that way, or you can do longer term relationships that way. So again, everything's kind of happening and coming into place where you can do collaboration. And I think also, lots more authors using virtual assistants for things they don't want to do, and also authors sharing their skills and being paid by other writers. So we've almost got the industry is like self-sustaining with the number of people who are offering services, as well as selling books. This is why I say we should encourage everybody in the world to write a book, because they then have to hire people to help them.
Definitely. And I think all of these things fall under the category of what I think of as partnership. And I think that's a trend that is growing and should grow and needs to grow. If it's one of the key factors I would see in a successful creative business is collaboration. And that can be collaborating with other writers to write a book, or it can be, you could call hiring a VA a form of collaboration, but also, looking at multiple streams of income and ways in which you can partner up with people who already have an audience that, would be good for you to work together on different sorts of projects. It doesn't even have to be the book. It could be something around the book, or something that grows a completely different wing. So partnership, I think, is key to growth and to fast growth in this game. So yeah, that is definitely going to be a growing trend, I've no doubt.
Yeah. Anything else on wrapping up 2017?
I don't think so, really. I think that's they are the what I would see as the most significant trends. I think I can't think of anything else.
Yeah, I think that's good. Okay, so looking forward to 2018. What are your plans, or the Alliance's plans, or?
Yeah, well, we'll be doing more of the same, in the sense that we're not planning anything different, but you will see a lot more, as I was talking about earlier on in the show, a lot more in terms of niche, small, quick and easy guides and publications coming from Ally. There are a couple of new campaigns which we haven't lifted the lid on yet. We'll be investigating blockchain and micropayments and author-led money chains. That's something that we're really interested in doing. And we're going to be doing a self-publishing quarterly, which we're going to be feeding out to writers' organizations around the world, so that self-publishing information is kept kind of timely and accurate, and is reaching authors in other territories, maybe which are not as far ahead, or don't have as many indies yet in the game as in the US and UK. So it's more along this going wide, going global theme will be very big for us next year. And we are going to, there'll be modifications to Fringe. We have always done it around a theme. So our early one in the year was about making the book, middle of the year about marketing the book, end of the year about running an author business and rights. But actually we're going to change that now and have two, just one at the beginning of the year and one at the end of the year, and all themes in each of those, and giving the Fringe its own website, and yeah, just generally kind of making it also the archive of the stuff that remains current, a bit like what you were talking about doing for the Creative Pen, tidying up all that stuff, losing the stuff that is no longer current, and making everything just that bit more user-friendly and easy to access and structured better. Yeah,
and we have to keep doing this kind of. And it's partly to do with our own brains sometimes, it's quite, because we've created from bottom up. It's like, I think at Youpreneur, I thought, if I was to start this business again, what would I put in place? Like if I was planning to build a 7-figure business, like the people in that room, many of them were there to start a business that they intended to grow very big. Most authors, well, I'd probably say 99.9% of authors don't go into it with that in mind. So we organically, things happen, and then you kind of have to start organizing things backwards, which is why I think I'm really happy to do, for me, 2018 will be really, I think, for the first time in like 9 years, getting very clear on what the creative pen is, because it's just been my journey, really, and I feel like I'll continue to share my journey, but I want also to have a very clear offering in what is now a very crowded self-publishing space, and make sure I can differentiate myself ongoing. And then for my fiction, I feel like that journey is still moving. I certainly next year I've got maybe one, well, definitely one, but maybe 2 Matt books in the Matt Walker series. So this new fantasy series, I've got an arcane novel, which it will be around San Francisco and New Orleans. I've got a couple of short stories, like one around Thomas Hardy that has been going around for years, and it's the 100th, must be more than the 100th anniversary of something of Thomas Hardy next year anyway, but I want to get something out, or it might be 200. I mean, he's really long dead, but yeah, that's been bubbling away. So I want to do more short stories next year, because I feel like there's so much I want to write in so many genres that I will probably be better off doing some short stories instead of starting a whole nother series. Also another London psychic book. I mean, I could just write fiction all next year, but I love the other side as well. So plus my mum wants to write 3 more sweet romance.
And she will.
And she will, yeah. I am my mother's daughter, that is for sure. So it's really interesting. Another really big year. I'm actually really excited about it. I've been, as I said, a bit bored, and now I feel like, oh yeah, I've got so much stuff to get my teeth into. And the other thing I've done, which is huge, is because you said to me last year, you know, December's a really bad month for you and you should be a bit more careful. And so I've cleared the decks for December, which I've now filled with all my own work, but I've said no to everything. So no interviews, no anything. And then next year I've already booked out a week a month of nothing, and at least 2 days a week, which I know for most people is like a weekend, but you know, 2 days a week plus a week a month of blocked out space for me is pretty major. So I'm really excited about that too.
Creative rest, people.
Yeah,
Great.
exactly. And I
Great.
feel like that will help me. Yeah, that will help me with what I want to create. And will help my business. So what about you? So you talked a bit about the alliance there. What about you personally, Orna Ross, for 2018?
Yeah, well, I'm finishing obviously the Go Creative stuff, and then I'm finishing a script that I've been working on for ages, and that's more or less, I'm really hoping that will be gone as well at the end of this year. And then I have 2 outstanding books that I need to finish that are really almost there. They just need the last pass through. And then I have a series in mind.
Ooh, something new.
Yeah, something new, which I'm really looking forward to. But in a sense, I can't. I'm making loads of notes. I have a little box where I stick things in, one virtual, one real. And I'm just not allowing myself to go there until I finish everything I've started. So, but it's shaping up to be something I think real and that will have legs for. I want to write much shorter. I've always written very long books. I want to write much shorter. You know, I'm becoming an indie. Write shorter, write faster, write more. And I'm really interested to see, you know, look at that model for a writer like me, who has always been a bit head clutching and, you know, all about, you know, I care about the language. I love sentence structure, all of that, holding that, of course, but not holding it quite so tightly.
Yeah, well, I think that would be really interesting. So, and we're allowed to do this. So just for everyone listening, we are allowed to change up the things we do. And in fact, if we're not growing and changing, then we're just dying.
Absolutely. That's a very good line on which to end the dying year.
No, of course, end the dying year and moving on to a happy 2018. So we will be back in January 2018 with what will probably be called something completely different.
Yes, we're changing our podcast as well. Well, we've actually moved only in the last few months to making our podcast a weekly offering, and we're just kind of upgrading it. So it's going to be primarily a podcast, and then we will add video, probably with main points and things like that, and upload to YouTube. So at the moment, we've been using YouTube as our content creation, but the sound quality and stuff we want to improve. So yeah, everything will change, and I think there will be it will be pre-recorded rather than live, and there'll be a new name, probably something around creative entrepreneurship, because that seems to be where the interest is and where the development is and where the growth is. So yeah,
exciting times.
Yes, indeedy.
Yeah. All right, well, happy holidays everyone, happy creating wherever you are, and happy new year.
Yes, indeed. When everyone else is consuming and eating, and you can be creating something marvelous.
Awesome. Bye then.
Okay, bye bye.